I still remember the exact moment my world twisted inside out, though at the time, I didn't realize it. Just last week, the plumbing in Mom and Dad's old house burst, flooding the kitchen floor with icy water. Without hesitation, I handed over $200 from my savings to cover the emergency repair. No thank you. No call from Mom. Just a quick, distracted nod before she returned to fussing over her phone. I'm Ramona Carter, 28 years old, a social worker by trade, but at home, I'm more like the family's invisible pillar. 6 years of helping others rebuild their shattered lives, yet my own family barely sees the foundation I've laid beneath them. I hold things together, finances, emotions, crises, quietly, so no one has to feel the cracks. My mother, Ava Young, is the sun around which our family orbits, but her light burns hot and controlling, casting long shadows where love should be. She demands attention like air and wields guilt like a weapon. I've sensed lately a tension I can't quite place, a silence that hums louder than words. Still, I push it down, trying to believe things could get better, that the family she preaches about isn't just a fragile facade. What no one knows is the house they live in isn't theirs at all. It's mine. I keep it a secret, a safety net woven from hope and exhaustion. For now, I play the role they expect, the daughter who sacrifices without complaint. I remember the sting of favoritism the moment I first understood it. I was 12, hiding behind the kitchen door when I overheard Mom's voice, sharp and dismissive, telling Aunt Mark that Lisa was the golden child, the one who truly mattered. Lisa, my older sister, was the favorite, spoiled with compliments, gifts, and the freedom to stumble without consequence. Meanwhile, I was the silent fixer, the peacekeeper who learned early to swallow my own needs. I still recall bringing home a B+ and hearing nothing but silence at dinner, while Lisa's C earned her gentle consolation and promises she was special. I tried to convince myself it was tough love, that Mom had reasons beyond my understanding. But that night, on my 16th birthday, the truth was undeniable. The family dinner was lively, stories and laughter swirling around the table, everyone except me. Mom didn't so much as mention my name. Meanwhile, Lisa's party was the town's highlight for days. That absence was a physical ache in my chest, a wound invisible to others but raw and persistent inside me. It was then I learned where I stood. Not seen, not heard, just expected. The sacrifices I've made for my family aren't small. They're the kind that quietly bleed you dry. For 5 years, I've sent $500 every month toward the mortgage, keeping the roof over their heads when times got tight. I've covered utility bills, car repairs, unexpected medical bills. Last year, I canceled a dream vacation with Daniel because Mom's health needed attention, and the money had to go somewhere else. Daniel watches all this with a mix of frustration and concern. He's the first to ask if the toll on me is fair, if I'm running on empty. I want to believe my sacrifices speak louder than words, that someday my love will be recognized, not dismissed as obligation. Lisa tries to stay neutral, supportive but hesitant, caught between her mother's manipulations and my silent endurance. The house, legally in my name, holds a secret power I've never dared to use, a quiet safeguard for the family I keep afloat. For now, I am the silent provider, the steady rock beneath a fragile family, clinging to hope that my efforts mean something. Last month's family dinner feels like a wound that hasn't healed. The moment came out of nowhere. Mom snapped at me in front of everyone, her voice sharp and accusing. Maybe if Ramona stopped overthinking, she'd see how much I do for her, she said, her eyes blazing with false hurt. You're always too sensitive, maybe even a little mentally unstable. The room fell dead silent. Lisa averted her gaze, and I caught Daniel's jaw tighten, the unspoken question clear. Is this really okay? My chest tightened, a burning humiliation spreading inside me. I wanted to fight back, to defend the years of silent support I'd given, but all I managed was a quiet, "I'm just trying to help." I left the table early, mumbling, "I need some air," the sting of her words echoing louder than I expected. I told myself she was just stressed, that she didn't mean it, but deep down, a seed of doubt took root. Maybe things weren't going to get better after all. Ava's eyes narrowed the moment she noticed I was pulling away. It was subtle at first. My quiet hesitation, the way I stopped volunteering for every little thing, the shorter answers when she grilled me about the house repairs. But she sensed the shift immediately, and instead of easing up, she doubled down. Within days, the atmosphere shifted like a storm rolling in. Whispers began to float through family gatherings, faint but piercing. "Ramona's acting unstable," said one cousin in a hushed tone. "She's always so dramatic," another muttered behind my back. It was as if Ava had spun a web, weaving a story where I was the villain, her difficult daughter who couldn't be reasoned with. Then came the calls. Aunt Mark, usually a steady ally, began to sound hesitant, her voice layered with concern and a strange kind of disappointment. "Ramona, please try to see things from your mother's side," she said cautiously. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." Cousins echoed similar sentiments, all subtle yet suffocating pressures to stop causing trouble, to be the daughter Ava deserves. Each conversation felt like a needle pricking at my confidence, eroding the foundation I'd painstakingly built. Ava's gaslighting was relentless. "You're imagining things," she whispered during a rare moment alone, her voice thick with false pity. "I've sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay me?" Her words weren't just accusations. They were chains tightening, designed to make me question my own reality. Daniel noticed too. The warmth in his eyes dimmed, replaced by a flicker of doubt I hadn't seen before. One evening, his voice trembled as he asked gently, "Are you sure you're okay, Ramona? Maybe you're taking it too hard." His doubt, unintentional but painful, carved deeper into the confusion swirling inside me. Even Lisa seemed to pull away, avoiding our usual easy conversations, her smiles forced and distant. The isolation was a slow drip of poison. I felt myself shrinking, retreating into silence, unsure if I was the problem or just a ghost trapped in a family that no longer recognized me. Ava's control tightened like a noose, and my own mind became a battlefield between doubt and desperation. Determined to find a way through the fog, I swallowed my pride and asked Ava for a private conversation. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the air thick and heavy, sunlight filtering weakly through the grimy window. I took a deep breath and spoke calmly, choosing my words like fragile glass. "Mom, I want us to understand each other. I've been supporting the house, helping with bills, and I feel hurt by your words." Her eyes flickered with something unreadable, a mix of disbelief and wounded pride. Tears welled, and she threw up her hands dramatically. "How could you say that? I'm the one suffering here. You don't appreciate me." I tried to keep my voice steady, reaching for reason. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I just want us to be honest. I need to feel respected." But before I could say more, Uncle Mark arrived, his presence like a shadow falling over the fragile moment. He took one look at me and dismissed my words with a wave. "Ramona, you're being too harsh. Ava's been through a lot. Maybe tone it down." His words stung like betrayal. I wanted to scream, to tell them all how much I'd given, how much I'd sacrificed, but the weight of their judgment crushed me. I left the room feeling smaller, invisible in a family that had declared me the problem. The hope I clung to for peace was snatched away, leaving only a deeper divide. The damage wasn't just emotional, it soon turned tangible. At my company's holiday party, a night I'd looked forward to as a brief escape, the damage struck hard. Ava made an unannounced phone call to my boss, her voice venomous as she labeled me mentally unstable and unreliable. The next morning, I was summoned to my boss's office. My heart pounded, expecting a reprimand or worse, termination. Instead, he slid a promotion letter across the desk, a gesture of trust that felt almost surreal. "Ramona, I believe in your work. Don't let family drama affect you," he said quietly. But the damage lingered beneath his words. Rumors swirled quickly. Colleagues cast sideways glances, their whispers like knives dressed as concern. I caught Lisa at the party, her eyes avoiding mine, her smile too forced to be real. It wasn't a slip or a misunderstanding. It was deliberate, a calculated cruelty meant to isolate me professionally and socially. The promotion was a thin shield against a storm Ava had unleashed, one that threatened to unravel the stability I fought so hard to maintain. The sting of betrayal wasn't just in the words Ava said, it was in the way she weaponized the people around me, turning the life I built into a battlefield. Despite everything, I reached out once more, a final bid for peace that felt like stepping onto a tightrope stretched thin. I laid my cards on the table, voice steady but laced with exhaustion. "Mom, I need honesty and respect to keep helping. I can't keep being hurt." I hoped for an opening, a crack in the wall she'd built. Instead, she recoiled, her voice sharp and cold. "You're playing the victim, Ramona. You're trying to ruin my life." The woman who should have been my refuge dismissed me with icy disdain. My simple plea for kindness was met with rejection so absolute it shattered something inside me. That night, lying awake in the quiet, I confronted a painful truth. I had given all I could: love, patience, support, and still, she chose to hurt me. The line was crossed, and though I felt vulnerable and rejected, a stubborn ember of resolve flickered in the dark. I was no longer just the invisible daughter. I was a woman who had seen the cracks and decided it was time to face the storm ahead, alone, if I must. After that cruel meeting with my boss, I thought maybe the worst was behind me. But Ava had already set her plan in motion, using every fragment of my vulnerability as ammunition. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered, some barely disguised accusations. "Ramona's unstable," I heard them say, voices dripping with false concern. Lisa stopped calling as often. Her texts became shorter, less frequent, like the warmth between us was slowly freezing over. Even Daniel, my steadfast anchor, began to hesitate. One evening, he looked at me with a shadow of doubt. "Maybe you are a little too sensitive, Ramona," he said, his voice gentle but uncertain. That single sentence felt like a crack in the foundation of my world. I sat alone in the quiet of my apartment, the muffled city sounds creeping through the window, and the weight of isolation crushed me. My mind churned with questions. Was I really the problem? Had I been too harsh, too demanding, too emotional? The self-doubt was a slow poison, seeping into every corner of my heart. Exhaustion settled like a fog, thick and suffocating. I felt the sting of betrayal not just from others, but from myself, for not seeing the truth sooner, for letting my guard down. The hope that had kept me going flickered, on the verge of being snuffed out. But beneath that heavy blanket of sadness, something small and stubborn began to glow, an ember of determination, quiet, almost imperceptible, but real. I realized that despite feeling alone, I still carried within me the strength to endure. The love I had given, the sacrifices made, they were not meaningless. I wasn't ready to disappear into the shadows Ava so desperately wanted to cast me into. The fight inside me wasn't over. I would find a way through this, even if it meant walking that path alone. I stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror, tired eyes looking back at me. "You're not crazy," I whispered, clutching the edge of the sink as if it could anchor me. The silence in my apartment echoed back the truth I refused to admit aloud. I was losing pieces of myself, but somewhere in the quiet, the real me was still breathing, still waiting to rise. Then came the final blow, one I never expected, the kind of betrayal that shatters trust beyond repair. I found out Ava had reached out to my employer again, this time with a letter filled with lies about my mental health. The letter accused me of instability, unreliability, painting me as a liability at work. I was summoned to my boss's office, the air thick with tension and unspoken accusations. When he slid the letter across the desk, my heart dropped. "Ramona, I need to be honest with you," he said quietly, eyes filled with sympathy but also concern. "This is serious." I felt like the floor had fallen beneath me. As if that wasn't enough, a phone call revealed Ava had secretly transferred a mountain of family expenses onto my credit card, bills I didn't know about, charges I hadn't approved, debts piling up with no warning. Financial ruin loomed, and I sat there, stunned, fingers trembling, as Daniel squeezed my hand in quiet support. At that moment, something inside me snapped. The veil lifted, and I saw Ava for what she truly was, a master manipulator wielding control like a weapon. The hope I'd clung to died that day, replaced by a cold, piercing clarity. I was done being her victim. A new part of me awoke, calm, calculating, and deadly serious. That night, I lay awake in my darkened apartment, the hum of the city outside a cruel reminder of the life I was fighting to hold on to. I replayed every sacrifice, every moment I had given all I had only to be used and discarded. My anger simmered beneath the surface, fueled by pain that cut deeper than any wound. I realized, with bitter clarity, this pattern had always been there, hidden behind smiles and false apologies, but I had refused to see it. The love I gave wasn't love. It was currency she spent to keep me chained. I thought about the house, the mortgage I had paid for years in silence. That house was mine, my secret weapon, my anchor in the storm. It was the one piece of power she couldn't touch. At least, not yet. I closed my eyes and made a silent vow. Never again. I would no longer be the pawn in her game, the woman who sacrificed everything for a love that was never real. Grief for what I lost transformed into a cold, sharp resolve that cut through the despair. I was ready, not for forgiveness, but for action. The next morning, I sat across from Daniel at our small kitchen table, the early light catching the tired lines on my face. "It's time to stop giving," I said, voice low but steady. His eyes searched mine, cautious but supportive. "She needs to feel the consequences of what she's done." We talked long into the morning, not about revenge, but strategy, a measured withdrawal of the support she depended on. Ava's control was built on my endless supply of help, financial, emotional, practical. Removing that lifeline would force her to confront reality. Together, we mapped out the first steps. Ava was the primary target, her manipulations the root of the chaos. Lisa's role was complicated, caught in the crossfire, sometimes unwittingly, but secondary. Quietly, I began severing financial ties, setting boundaries with family members who had become pawns in Ava's game. Daniel stood with me, unwavering, his presence a steady light in the gathering storm. We both knew this wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I felt in control. The battle was just beginning, but this time, I was ready to fight on my own terms. I sat at the kitchen table, a scrawled notebook open before me, as I began cataloging every way my family leaned on me. The numbers spilled out: $500 for the mortgage, $350 in utility bills, car insurance payments, groceries, and even the costs tied to Mom's frequent medical appointments. I realized how deeply entangled my finances had become in holding this fragile household upright. But it wasn't just money. I was the emotional anchor, arranging her doctor visits, smoothing over disputes with relatives, and absorbing the constant guilt trips. The weight pressed down on me, heavy and relentless. Yet, as I put pen to paper, a strange clarity emerged. This inventory wasn't just a list. It was a map of vulnerabilities I could leverage. It was power I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge before. I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer, feeling a tension in my chest as I faced the unknown. Sitting across from her in a sterile office, I laid out everything: the mortgage payments in my name, bank statements documenting transfers to Mom, texts where Ava pleaded for money, and emails confirming my contributions. She nodded thoughtfully, then delivered the news I hoped for. The house was legally mine. No hidden clauses, no gray areas. I felt a flicker of relief, but also a simmering anger. How had I been so blind to the extent of my sacrifice? How had they counted on me without ever truly acknowledging it? Gathering all this evidence felt like collecting ammunition, and I was suddenly poised not just to protect myself, but to expose what had been hidden in plain sight. Going through those bank statements again, I found dozens of transactions where Ava had asked, just this once, but the requests never stopped. Texts from her that twisted sympathy into obligation, messages begging for help that felt more like demands. Each line reinforced the pattern: the endless dependence on me, the silent exploitation wrapped in a veneer of family loyalty. I felt a cold determination settle in my bones. This wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming control over my life, over my own resources, and finally drawing a line. The realization was sobering, but it also gave me a sense of calm. I could navigate this. I just had to be methodical, precise. This knowledge was a weapon, and I intended to wield it with careful intention. Night after night, I documented everything: dates, amounts, conversations. I stored it all digitally, encrypting files so that no one but me could access them. I thought about Daniel and how he'd reminded me to protect myself, and I felt less alone. This was the first step I needed, the foundation to build a new reality where I wasn't the family's financial safety net at their mercy. I wasn't naive. I knew this path would be messy, even painful, but as I closed the notebook, the quiet in the room felt less oppressive. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was taking back some control. The pieces were in place. Now I just had to act. The weeks slipped by in a careful choreography of quiet changes. I updated all my passwords: email, banking, utilities, locking out any chance Ava might sneak in again. Automatic payments for the mortgage and bills were rerouted, slowly severing the financial ties I'd long maintained without recognition. I called my lawyer to keep her in the loop, letting her know I was preparing to protect my assets. She didn't say much, but her calm professionalism reassured me. All the while, I kept the surface calm around Ava and the rest of the family. I smiled at gatherings, answered her calls with the same patience as before, even when my stomach twisted in frustration. No one saw the storm building beneath my composed exterior. My mind stayed focused on the quiet countdown ticking away inside me. Each day was a piece of the calm before the storm, the necessary stillness before I pulled the plug on years of silent sacrifice. It was exhausting to maintain this duality: the friendly daughter, the invisible woman behind the scenes plotting her own survival. But I knew this guise was vital. If Ava sensed the shift too soon, she'd ratchet up the manipulation, and I'd lose the advantage. So I kept my voice steady, my words measured, careful not to reveal the fire simmering just beneath the surface. At times, the silence felt suffocating, a heavy pressure that made my chest ache like a slow burn. Yet, amidst the tension, I found a strange peace. For the first time in years, I was not reacting to Ava's whims but steering the course myself. There was power in that. I reminded myself, often quietly, that this was about survival, about reclaiming my dignity. The small victories, changing a password, redirecting a payment, felt like markers on an invisible battlefield. I was ready. The facade would hold a little longer. The real game, the one that mattered, was about to begin. One rainy afternoon, while sorting through dusty boxes in the attic, I found an old folder tucked behind a stack of forgotten photo albums. The label, "Important," was handwritten in my grandfather's neat script. My heart thudded with a mix of curiosity and dread as I carefully unfolded a letter, yellowed with age, addressed to me, and dated just months before he passed. His words were clear, deliberate. He had intended for me to inherit a substantial sum, money Ava had concealed, diverting nearly $200,000 for herself. The shock hit me like a punch. This was the hidden truth behind the family's perpetual financial struggles, the secret debts Ava had never disclosed. Reading his letter, I felt a surge of betrayal that cut deeper than any argument or manipulation. This wasn't just about money. It was a theft of trust and legacy. My grandfather had wanted to protect me, to give me a foundation Ava had stolen without remorse. The pieces clicked together: the unexplained bills, the tightness around family finances, the constant strain masked by Ava's victim act. She had been living off what was meant for me this whole time. My chest tightened with a mix of grief and fury. The fight I was preparing for suddenly had a new, sharper edge. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was about justice. The letter felt like both a curse and a call to arms. I clutched it tightly, my hands trembling as I thought about the years lost, the opportunities Ava's theft had erased. But I also felt my resolve harden. This discovery gave my plan a weight I hadn't known it needed, moral certainty that fueled my resolve. I wasn't just defending myself against emotional abuse. I was reclaiming what was mine by right, tearing away the layers of lies piece by piece. Ava's carefully constructed narrative was unraveling, and I was the one holding the thread. That evening, I barely slept. The rain tapped softly against the window, mirroring the turmoil inside me. I reread the letter over and over, each sentence strengthening the resolve that had been flickering all along. Ava's deception wasn't just manipulative, it was criminal. I knew my next steps had to be precise, measured, and irreversible. The discovery had changed the stakes. I wasn't just withdrawing support. I was preparing to make Ava face the full weight of her betrayal, in every way possible. The first missed mortgage payment was a quiet act of defiance, but a seismic shift beneath the family's surface. I reallocated the funds, letting the check bounce. Then I stopped the automatic bill payments for utilities. The phone calls came almost immediately, Ava's voice frantic, laced with the usual blend of guilt and accusation. "Ramona, please, you can't do this. We need you." I didn't answer. The silence was a message louder than any word. At work, I kept my composure, though inside, the tension tightened like a coil. I felt my heart pounding when overdue notices began arriving at the house, the threat of service suspension looming. Family gatherings grew tense, whispers swirling around me like cold drafts. No one dared accuse me openly, but the atmosphere was thick with suspicion. Daniel watched me closely, his eyes reflecting a mixture of concern and awe, as he noticed the controlled calm I wore like armor. "You're different," he said quietly during a rare moment alone. I met his gaze without flinching. "I have to be." I said nothing more, letting my actions speak for me. Each bill left unpaid, each plea ignored, was a piece of the reckoning Ava had refused to face for years. The game had shifted, and this time, I was the one holding the board. The tension was palpable, a silent war waged in phone calls left unanswered, and financial support withdrawn. Ava's world began to unravel in small but unmistakable ways. Threats from utility companies, calls from creditors, and the mounting pressure were the first real consequences she'd faced in years. Family members whispered nervously, unable to connect the dots to me, but the undercurrent of change was undeniable. Daniel's quiet presence was a beacon in the chaos, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this. I steeled myself for what was next, knowing these first moves were only the beginning of a long, painful unraveling. But for the first time in a long time, I felt powerful. I was no longer invisible. I was the storm. The day of the family gathering, my heart drummed a rhythm of nerves and resolve as I clutched the grandfather's letter tightly in my hand. The room buzzed with false warmth. Quiet conversations, laughter straining to mask undercurrents of tension. Ava sat in her usual seat, a queen surrounded by her loyal subjects, none suspecting the reckoning about to unfold. When I stepped forward, the noise dimmed, eyes turning toward me like I was an intruder. I held up the yellowed letter and with a calm I fought to maintain said, "Mom, I know about the $200,000 you stole. I've paid the mortgage and bills for years. And now, I'm done covering for you." The words echoed, slicing through the hollow chatter. Her face went pale, lips quivering with a tremor of panic. "That's not true. You don't know what you're talking about." But I was ready. I have the documents and the law on my side. This house is mine now. From today forward, you're responsible for yourself. The room froze, eyes flickering between us. Lisa and Mark, who'd always been caught in her web, watched with a mixture of shock and something like admiration. I felt a surge of power, not from malice, but from reclaiming my dignity. No more financial aid. No more emotional blackmail, I added firmly, voice steady despite the knot tightening in my stomach. The control that Ava had wielded for so long shattered in that moment, replaced by a silence heavy with truth. I scanned the room, gauging reactions. Some faces tightened in disbelief, others softened with relief. Ava's lips pressed into a thin line, blinking rapidly as if trying to erase what I'd said. I could almost see the cracks forming in her carefully constructed facade. For years, she'd controlled through guilt and manipulation, but now, the tables had turned. No longer the puppet master, but the one exposed. I felt a strange lightness, as if a heavy chain had been lifted from my shoulders. The boundaries were clear, unyielding. I was done sacrificing myself to keep her comfortable. After I spoke, the air shifted palpably. Ava's usual venom was silenced, replaced by an uneasy retreat. The witnesses, still processing, whispered among themselves, and for the first time, The family saw me not as the obedient daughter, but as a woman who had found her voice. I didn't gloat or shout. My victory was quiet but absolute. This wasn't just confrontation. It was liberation. I left the room with my head held high, the letter still clutched in my hand like a shield and a sword. In the days that followed, Ava's world crumbled faster than I anticipated. Utility bills went unpaid, and services were cut off with curt notices taped to the door. Creditors called incessantly, their voices harsh and impatient. Ava scrambled, sending frantic texts and leaving pleading voicemails that I chose to ignore. "Ramona, please. It's not what you think," she begged once, voice cracking with desperation. But the exhaustion from years of bearing her burden gave me strength to stand firm. I refused to reopen the wounds she had inflicted on me. The past was closed. Lisa and Mark, once entangled in Ava's stories, began to question her narrative quietly. Their hushed conversations carried a new tone, something like doubt, even sympathy for me. The family dynamic shifted under the weight of truth. The web of lies Ava spun so skillfully started to unravel with each ignored plea and every unpaid bill. Her isolation deepened visibly, the once vibrant center of attention now a shrinking figure on the edges. I felt no cruelty in this. It was simply natural consequence catching up with her. This was the reckoning she'd long dodged. Throughout this unraveling, Daniel stood by me, his steady presence a reminder that I wasn't alone. I focused on building my new life, the sharp edges of betrayal dulling into a clearer vision of freedom. I refused to be drawn back into the chaos of manipulation or guilt. The boundaries I set were unyielding, a fortress around my peace. Ava's desperate attempts to regain control only highlighted her loss. I watched her world collapse without gloating, just with the quiet knowledge that for the first time, I was free. The escalation was predictable. Ava's desperation grew more frenzied, her tactics harsher. She threatened legal action, slinging accusations of betrayal in public gatherings and to distant relatives. "She's tearing this family apart," she cried, painting herself once more as the victim. But we were prepared. Daniel and I had consulted lawyers, and the walls of our home were fortified with resolve and documentation. Family members she enlisted to pressure me found their efforts futile. I didn't respond to manipulations or gaslighting. I had learned to shield myself. Some relatives, once loyal to Ava's narrative, approached me quietly with apologies. Their eyes lowered in shame as they admitted to being caught in the crossfire, manipulated by a toxicity they hadn't fully understood before. I accepted their words with cautious grace, mindful not to let old wounds reopen. Ava's isolation grew, a solitary figure surrounded by echoes of past control. Her frantic attempts only underscored her defeat, the grip she once had slipping through her fingers like sand. The control that had defined her existence was gone. I stayed firm, unshaken, refusing to engage in her drama. Each failed attempt at manipulation was a quiet victory. The legal counsel we had was ready not just for threats, but to protect the boundaries I had fought for. The family started to heal in fragments, some relationships rebuilding on a more honest foundation. I watched this all quietly, knowing that true power came not from loud confrontations, but from steady resilience. Ava's downfall was a testament to the strength I had found within myself. 6 months later, the house feels like home at last. The debts are managed, the mortgage secure under my name. The air here carries a quiet peace I never thought possible. Daniel and I have grown closer, our relationship a steady anchor through the storm. The constant tension that once clung to every corner has lifted. I still see Lisa sometimes, but with clear boundaries built on mutual respect, not obligation or guilt. Ava's shadow no longer darkens my doorway. Her influence has faded into memory. Reflecting on this journey, I understand now that peace isn't about forgiveness or approval. It's about owning your worth. I don't pretend the wounds are fully healed, but the chains that once bound me have been broken. The choice to reclaim my life was mine alone, and that freedom feels like a quiet victory. I am no longer defined by her manipulation or the sacrifices I made for her. Instead, I am defined by the strength to walk away and build something new. The future is uncertain, but for the first time, it feels like mine to shape.